Welcome to the Half Court Press Podcast. He's Joel Lorenzi. I'm Dirk Chatelain. Welcome back for a post-Christmas summary of Nebraska and Creighton basketball. Lots to talk about, some of which is going to be more pressing than other things. Creighton had a nice little recovery the last couple weeks from their 6-game losing streak. The Creighton women lost last night quite badly to UConn. Yeah. Not a performance that satisfied the coaching staff. I know that. And down in Lincoln, the Nebraska women took one on the chin last night. The Husker men play tonight against Iowa, and that's where we're going to start. It's a 6 p.m. game. The pod will not have many hours of livelihood before that game tips off. But I do want to start with probably the biggest event on the Nebraska, certainly the late December schedule, and that is Iowa's annual trip to Lincoln. Sellout crowd tonight at Pinnacle Bank Arena. The atmosphere should be festive, if not raucous. Probably depends on how many tantrums Fran McCaffrey throws. This is a game that Nebraska fans really get up for, Joel, and it's a game that, frankly, Nebraska has had a hard time against Iowa in recent meetings. Ever since about, January 2020, when Fred Hoiberg upset Fran McCaffrey and Luka Garza and proceeded to lose every game the rest of that season. The Huskers have had a hard time against Iowa since then. Last year, Iowa came into Lincoln and beat Nebraska 88-78. That was the game right after Trev Alberts announced that Fred Hoiberg would return for this season. Fred used to sort of own McCaffrey, and lately the tables have turned. So it's going to be a really good environment. Iowa's got a nice team coming off a bizarre loss to Eastern Illinois as a 31-point favorite a week ago. One of the biggest upsets, I think, in college basketball history from an odds maker standpoint. And the Huskers are a little bit of could go either way right now. They looked okay against Queens University last week, but they were sort of running on fumes against K-State before that. This is a game that I think Nebraska, from a fan base perspective, really needs, and I think you're going to see an extremely active Nebraska defense tonight. They're gonna get after Iowa and see if Chris Murray can and Patrick McCaffrey can have enough skill level to lead Iowa to a victory. I anticipate a very close game. Joel, as someone new to this state, this is one that people here really get excited about. And I think if Nebraska can beat Iowa and Creighton in the same month, despite some of the other setbacks, that would be a pretty successful month of December for Fred Hoiberg.
Sure, and like you said, I think the fan base needs it. I think the last time we talked, they had just went overtime with Purdue. After, I think it was a game after without Griesel, they relatively competed with IU. Probably, I think fans were encouraged about their chances if they would have had Griesel. So we, fast forward a couple weeks, and since then, they lost pretty handily to Kansas State. So a setback there from what I'm sure people felt was some forward momentum after they thumped Creighton at CHI. So I think this is a necessary win. If this is the year where we're like, okay, Hoiberg deserves time, like this, I think this is a win that's up there in terms of significance.
It's a great point. It is a bellwether game. This is a game where if you can say that Fred Hoiberg is the man to trust, to lean into, then this is the type of game that you win. And Nebraska is generally pretty good at home in the Big Ten. At least they used to be when Miles was rolling along. Fred has struggled more, but these are the types of games. They played well against Purdue at home. They rolled Boston College at home. I expect this team to have more confidence. You usually get a pretty good version of Wiltshire and Tominaga at home. I think Nebraska, this is a type of game where you look at the schedule and you say, if you're going to win 15 games, if you're going to get to the brink of the NIT, this is the type of game you got to win. And when you start 0-2 in the Big Ten at Indiana and Purdue at home, this is the type of game that you need to sort of get back on track in the Big Ten standings. So it's, you don't get a lot of like just raucous crowds in Lincoln, especially for a program that has struggled the last 3-4 years. But I really think this one will find people pretty amped up. I mean, Joel, you've been around long enough now to know that Iowa tends to rankle people around here, and I think we joked about the McCaffrey thing, but seriously, people will go to this game tonight and they'll have one eye on Fran McCaffrey just to see if they can light him up, if they can get him to erupt. So it's a really fun game on the Nebraska schedule. Probably not quite as high as the Creighton game, but certainly number 2, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. And from the game standpoint, I mean, Iowa's been one of the better offenses in the country. They're still a top 40 team, and so I'm wondering, do you count on Fred Hoiberg to get a win like this? Because it's still a big win to me, even at home. I mean, do you count on him to get too many big wins, including this one?
Well, again, when we went through the Nebraska after that Creighton game and after the Purdue game, you could kind of see a model, right? Like you could kind of see a template for how Nebraska gets to 15 wins, and it was a defense that is just relentless. It was an offense that does just enough with Derek Walker at sort of the point of the attack. It was sort of old school basketball. And they got to get some offensive infusion from those perimeter guards. If Tominaga can get into double figures and hit some threes, that obviously helps. But I think Nebraska is, the margin for error is so small for this program because of the offensive struggles that if their defense is not on point, they're gonna lose. But the good part about being at home, Joel, is that defensively, you gain energy from that crowd, and the crowd at Nebraska so often responds to energy. They can sense it sort of in the team. They like a blue collar, rugged team. This Nebraska defense, at its best, is extremely blue collar and rugged. So I think this is a night where Nebraska could frustrate Iowa. Iowa has a great offense, as you noted, but they haven't played super well lately. They blew out Iowa State a month ago. Since then, they haven't had a lot of data points. They lost to Wisconsin. They lost bizarrely to Eastern Illinois a week ago. This is not an Iowa team that's hitting all cylinders right now. So I think if Nebraska can frustrate them defensively, this is a game that the Huskers can win.
Sure, and it's fair that this is the time, I think, to catch Iowa if you're going to catch them. But I do think like Iowa, from what I've seen, I mean, Chris Murray's a hooper, man, and
he didn't play against Eastern Illinois a week ago, and that's a big factor.
Yeah, and their offense is like, we call it good, but it's legitimately up. Like I don't think they're ranked in the AP poll, right? But their offense is legitimately like probably a top 20.
What's their Ken Palm offensive efficiency? You got the numbers in front of you, don't you?
Here, let's see. So they got the 10th ranked offense in the country, which is like, we call them good, but they're better than good on that.
That's great. That's great.
You look at Nebraska's obviously frustrated good offensive teams. Probably, I think I would bunch Creighton in there, even though Creighton clearly has internal issues that Iowa probably can't speak for. But
and Purdue too.
Yeah, no doubt. And even though Purdue's offense is like, you just have the best first option in the country,
right?
And just let them rock. But I'll give some credit to Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith. They got good guys away from the ball and who can control the offense. But Iowa's it's different, man. This is a legitimately potent offense.
They're an NCAA tournament team. There's
no doubt. And Nebraska, as much as they can frustrate teams, I'd say they're well above average defensively. But when you get against, like, Purdue was a great showing, right? But when you get against the better teams in the country, how consistently can you be maybe a top 30, top 40 defense instead of just well above average?
I'd be surprised if this game isn't close tonight, one way or the other. I think it's a 2 or 3 possession game. Iowa's a 3-point favorite. We'll see how the Huskers perform as an underdog. All right, transitioning to 60 miles up Interstate 80 to the Creighton Blue Jays. A couple really important wins to get back on track with Ryan Kalkbrenner back in the fold. The Jays wait a couple more days before hosting Seton Hall. Joel, what are your primary takeaways from 2 relatively important Creighton wins here in the past week at home?
Yeah, well, from the first game, I thought you could see the impact of Kalkbrenner immediately. Even if he's not scoring, which I believe he went 8 for 9 that game, so he was scoring. But even when he's not, and I saw there was a stark difference. Like, as good as Fred King's been, people pointed during that stretch and said, oh, they don't need Kalkbrenner. Look at the numbers King's putting up. And, salute to Fred because he's young and he's killing it, and they really needed him to spot those minutes. But it goes beyond the numbers, right? Like, you look at impact, like, it's going to sound nerdy, but screening and roll gravity and stuff that doesn't show in the box score, but literally controls your offense. And so I saw immediately when Kalkbrenner came back, like, the offense was just, now barring the first 10 minutes, the offense was just much cleaner. And I think part of that was, you see a step up from Shireman, who got punked in that Marquette game, and, he's turned the tables, I think, in terms of aggression. Other guys just seem to operate smoother when Kalkbrenner's on the floor. I thought that was my main takeaway from the first game. And then the last game, he didn't score a ton, but you still saw those impacts. Obviously, I don't know how many people would have predicted a Trey Alexander 30 ball. I thought that was really impressive. Yeah,
and Trey is, I was probably harder on Trey the first 10 games of the season than most people were, but I thought he really struggled there for several weeks. And if they can get him back on track, I think that might be the biggest source of encouragement. So, Joel, the other thing is Creighton historically is really, really good at home. I mean, just because of the crowd and the environment and, the ability to knock down 3-point shots, which create these kind of big momentum avalanches, they are traditionally an extremely good home team. When you don't play a stretch of home games for a long time, and, the Nebraska game obviously was an exception to that, and they didn't play well. But but if they can get back, into being if they can win 9 out of 10 Big East games at home, which I think they can, that gives you a nice solid base to go 14-6 in the league. And I think Creighton can do that. They've got to fall back on the home crowd, which traditionally has been really good for Creighton. And I think this 3-game stretch is a nice opportunity to sort of reestablish that part too.
Yeah, and it came at the right time because, like you mentioned, that was a long time to be away from home, and it's not just being away from home. You're playing, the degree of teams you're playing is unreal. I mean, I don't know how many programs would actually sign up for that, but Mac did, Creighton did, and they had some takeaways that they might have been encouraged with, but for the most part, they probably regret doing it now. But you can't take that back, right? So you're probably lucky that, Butler, DePaul of all teams, and then Seton Hall are the 3 teams you're playing in a row in this homestand. Now, I won't write off Seton Hall. I think they've had some frustration in this first year under a new head coach, but you can't, like, the thing with Seton Hall, they can't score. Like, I look at their class they brought in and the guys they retained and the transfers, and I was pretty high on them entering the season because I'm looking at a bunch of similar size, lengthy, switchy defenders who I thought could be really gritty, and for the most part they've looked the part, right? But they can't score a lick. Like, it's pretty embarrassing to watch. So I won't fault Shaheen for that, but there's something that has to happen for the direction to change. I don't know if it happens this year, maybe as soon as next year. I don't know, but I think I don't want to write them off, but it's a good game for Creighton to be playing considering the the past few weeks.
Yep, and as you alluded to, the schedule ramps up after that. Let's talk about maybe the most interesting story of the week with Creighton, and that is this absolutely jaw-dropping television number that came out of the DePaul Christmas game. I will admit, Joel, I'm still sort of skeptical, about the idea of bringing in your fan base on Christmas Day and all the arena workers and all that stuff for a game against that isn't gonna make a big difference in the end of the season. But man, that TV number, the fact that it was the highest rated college basketball game on Fox Sports ever. The fact that it was it beat every NBA game on Christmas Day except one, right? Just a stunning number. 3 million people watched Creighton DePaul on Christmas Day, and it validated the belief that it could be a big promotional opportunity for Creighton. Give us a little bit of background into that decision, and also maybe the response to it.
Yeah. So I'll play devil's advocate here and debunk some of the arguments, because there were some people up in arms about this game being had, and I was reading some of the comments under my story, which was just obviously, objectively speaking, like I think it's interesting the direction Marcus Blossom is taking this program in. He really wants to make this program a heavy hitter, a national powerhouse, and he feels to do that, you leap at the opportunity, which back in May when all the teams had this on the table and Big Fox came to the league, there weren't a ton of hands being raised. Like, nobody there. I mean, this is college. This is in the NBA, right? So who's raising their hand at a Christmas game? Like, nobody wants to play on Christmas. But Marcus Blossom did, and he saw the vision, and he thought, playing on Big Fox, which they're already playing on Big Fox a few other times, but playing as much as possible and on a day is
right after an NFL game.
Yep. Would benefit the program. And I mean, you saw the numbers. I mean, shit. Like like these are I was probably as shocked as you were. And it's hard to argue with the decision now. Like, I thought it was the right decision beforehand. Like, I thought for what he wants to do with the program, like, it made all the sense in the world. I think the thing that made the least sense was DePaul. But
see, I think you could have justified it with UConn or Villanova or Xavier or Marquette.
But then again, that wasn't up to him. And from my understanding, like, DePaul wanted to, enhance their brand, so they leaped at the opportunity. And there might have been another school that wanted to, but it just didn't. It fell apart. And so DePaul was certainly not, like, I don't think Marcus Blossom went into it like, yeah, I want to. Let's do it. DePaul down of the year. No, it didn't work out that way. But DePaul was one of the willing teams who was like, we want to up our brand too. Now, DePaul is probably a far cry from changing their brand. I mean, we already chat on them last week or whatever podcast it was. But they were like-minded in the sense that they wanted those same eyes. And frankly, they got a lot of them, man.
Yeah, it was... like I said, it dropped my jaw pretty good yesterday when those numbers came out. I still think there's an argument to be made that, and regardless of whether you're a Jesuit university or not, I think there's an argument to be made that when you host a big event like that on Christmas Day, you're pulling a lot of people away from their families. The other side of that is, man, Christmas break is a long time. People get sick of their families. They can carve out 3 hours, to go to work or to go to a basketball game. I think, to your point, the numbers probably at the end of the day justify the decision and silence some of the skeptics like me who didn't think it was a great idea based on the opponent. Now, the interesting part, Joel, is, does it become a tradition at Creighton? Is it something that they come back to and say, hey, we want to do that every year? We want to host... I don't think you'd probably want to sign up for a road game on Christmas. You might disagree with me on that.
I don't think you
But man, if you could be the Big East program that hosts a Christmas Day game every year, specifically in a time slot, that's attractive, you're not always going to get right after an NFL game probably. Right. But I think if you could do that every year and sort of sell it and make it a highlight of the schedule, that might be something that Creighton wants to do every year.
Yeah. Okay. So before I answer this, I will say, like, the people whose argument was, oh, the workers, the poor workers in the stadium, like, that game doesn't happen without a working staff inside the arena. Like, that was the last box they had to check off. Like, could they get people to work that day who were willing, not being forced, but willing to work that day? That's the only reason the game happened, was that was the last box to check off. So the people were like, oh, you forced those workers to go to work. How could you on Christmas? How could you do that? It just didn't happen like that, man.
Yeah. Well, and again, like my point, there's a lot of family time at Christmas. I think some people are.
I mean, it was a 3:30 game. Like, you had your morning to
it's
do
not
whatever,
it's not a 10 a.m. tip off, to your point. And go ahead. I interrupted you.
No worries. And so, I think it can be a yearly thing. I don't know if they'll do it again next year. They might take a year off to.
No, man. Once you establish it, you got to do it every year.
I don't know. There's no telling. But I will say, I think the next time they do it, you won't be looking at it DePaul. I think people around the league are seeing the numbers, and I think the UConns and the Villanovas of the world are coming calling pretty soon about that game. I think we look at it now and people were up in arms, the fans of this little Jesuit university in Omaha, but we look down the line and this might cause a huge ripple effect. Like, we might be seeing the Big East host Christmas games for a long time now. Like, it's really we're witnessing something that probably is going to be bigger than we thought it was. And you know, for people who entered this season, like, looking at Creighton's roster and seeing the number 9 ranking preseason and saying, yeah, we one of the powerhouses in the country, we up there now, and we can go with the best of them. Like, that doesn't happen if you don't act like the best of them. If you don't put yourself in those positions, the best programs in the country, like Kentucky, these guys are playing the most nationally televised games. I shouldn't even mention Kentucky with the way they're playing. These guys are playing the most nationally televised games. I mean, they're the teams people want to watch, and they're putting themselves in those positions. They got the resources, they got everything. A Christmas game is nothing to them. I mean, obviously, I don't remember last time Kentucky played on Christmas. Probably not a thing, but I'm sure they would put themselves in a similar position, because that is what those like-minded programs do. I mean, you can't say you want your school to be a top program and be mad that it's putting itself in a position to draw the resources. I mean, that game, 3 million people watched that game. I'm sure a few of them were recruits and whoever else. I'm sure some of the 5 stars are looking at that game and saying, damn, they played on Christmas.
No, you see, when you see a platform that is unoccupied, you have to have the guts, I guess, to step up and say, yeah, we'll do it. So for that, I give Creighton credit. I give Marcus Blossom credit. It does make me wonder if maybe this is bigger than just a Big East game. You know, can this be what if you played Nebraska on Christmas? What if you played, what if you played Gonzaga or Missouri or Wisconsin, or
Nebraska wouldn't happen, but I do like the Gonzagas and whatever the world.
What if you can make it a Creighton tradition that goes beyond the Big East Conference?
Yeah, and I'm not sure Creighton would have the same team to make a Gonzaga game interesting next year, but I will say I think this game benefited them in terms of building that team that could be competitive with Gonzaga. I mean, like I said, like, recruits are watching. I'm sure this is a big deal for them too.
Yeah,
so.
And again, are you going to get many Big East teams that want to go on the road on Christmas Day? You know, knowing that you're leaving on Christmas Eve, you're spending Christmas Eve night in Omaha, Nebraska.
Sure.
You know, does Xavier want to do that? Does Villanova want to do that? Probably not. That's why I think maybe you have to open it up nationally, and just, in the same way that the Detroit Lions host a Thanksgiving game every year. Hey, Creighton's going to be the anchor for Fox College basketball on Christmas Day. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a Big East team. Maybe you look at the preseason top 25 every year and you say, who might want to do this, knowing that you're going to get a big audience.
Three teams in your head. Who are you going with next year? Just not even knowing who they have, just knowing their names in the programs.
As with Creighton as a host, well, I think Gonzaga would be really interesting because Gonzaga has a national following. I don't think Gonzaga would probably do it.
Hey, if Creighton's good next year, you never know.
It's true. And, Gonzaga went to Birmingham, Alabama to play, Alabama. So you don't rule it out. But I think somebody from a national scope would be really interesting. You're not going to get Duke or Carolina, but maybe you could get, maybe you could get a Michigan or somebody like that to come into Creighton.
Sure.
I think maybe Texas comes up, for
Texas,
a return trip. Again, I think there are logistical challenges. I think DePaul signed up for it in part because DePaul doesn't get a lot of national TV games. But I think it is certainly something worth exploring. I think now that you've done it once, the Creighton fan base is more likely to accept it as a yearly thing. But I would want to stay at home, Joel. I don't think I would want to be traveling to.
Where did the Mizzou name come from?
Well, it's a Midwestern program that's not an elite school. No knock to you as a grad, but
hey, I'm not MIZ. I'm not one of those. But I think they would be in good position to play a game.
I think Marquette would be an interesting fit. Because I think people view those two schools as sort of sister schools and rivals, but it's certainly worth exploring. I think there was enough positive feedback from it. It obviously helps that Creighton won the game, Joel. If Creighton loses, I think people have a different experience.
Yeah.
But I think if you could find a way to make it an annual tradition, that's something they should explore.
Sure.
Let's talk Creighton women. UConn came in last night. Boy, what an event when you see the Connecticut women, playing in Omaha, Nebraska. That's a highlight of the schedule. It didn't necessarily go as the Jays planned. Describe what you saw.
Yeah, and let me just tell you, these women are celebrities, dog. Like, they had the whole gym lined up to get autographs from players who weren't even playing.
And this isn't even like a signature UConn team, right?
Yeah, Paige is not playing. AZ's still waiting to be reevaluated. I think she gets reevaluated today on her injury. And man, the fans were, and there was a good chunk of people with UConn gear on,
they're
jerseys, they're legitimate celebrities. It was crazy to see that thing unfold. But yeah, the Huskies were shorthanded. Let's say, they've had a weird year in terms of the injury bug, and they were probably especially shorthanded yesterday, and they only went 6 deep, really maybe 7 through the stretch of the game, but they really only stuck to 6, and they just completely thumped Creighton. Creighton and Jim Flannery, man. I'm a big fan of Flan as a quote, man. He's such a great quote, dog, and just never change, Flan. I'll say that, but. After the game, because they went 3 for 28 from 3, which is not a winning recipe. But
16 points in the first half.
Yeah, but that was hardly their biggest issue. I think they've knowingly, they have acknowledged their struggles with defending strong post presences, and UConn had 2. Of all the players they had playing, they had 2 really good post presences. Aaliyah Edwards, I think she was the first player with 20 and 20 since Maya Moore, I think they said in the post game, which is obviously, you want to be in that sentence with a player like that. And then Dorka Juhas, she, what I thought with Creighton, I brought this up to Flan, they could only do so much with the post presences, right? But I thought the way they showed help and flash doubles and whatever early on in the first half, even though they maybe gave up some layups to some actions they'd walk through, like you mentioned, I thought the help that they showed and the doubles they flashed were encouraging. They legitimately forced some turnovers and were doing some good things on that end, and they kept the game within reason to where people were like, oh, this game could change at any moment if they knock down threes, which never happened.
They never did.
But I think it was less because they never knocked down threes, and more because they started dominating in the post, and they started going away from, you saw UConn really hunting mismatches and like quickly, like they flipping it from post to post, or like as soon as the ball passes half court, they throwing it up to Yuhas, and she has one person guarding her. Like that's the stuff that doesn't win you a game. And then even when they're smoking bunnies, like there's rebound after rebound after rebound, and at that point it's like there has to be defensive adjustments that I think Flan walked through, but just didn't happen, or it didn't go the way he wanted to. So they probably weren't a match to begin with, even with the shorthanded Huskies.
You know, Creighton played. We talked about the Creighton men's schedule and how aggressive it was. The Creighton women's schedule was just absolutely a gauntlet.
Yeah,
you know, especially in December and really the whole first 2 months of the season. They've lost 3 in a row: Arkansas, Stanford, Connecticut. They're probably never going to play a schedule this rigorous again. In some ways, I think it's beneficial to sort of catch your breath before you go into conference season and say, okay, you know, the worst is behind us. But in other ways, you know, that was a little bit of a gut punch, considering where the program was at the end of last season and the high hopes for this season and how well they started, to sort of reevaluate what they can be. You know, this is a team that, I mean, they throttled Nebraska. I mean, they started the season so well. It's disappointing. It's disappointing what happened last night, and to a lesser degree what happened against Stanford too. So I think the Creighton women have to sort of collect themselves before they hit stride in Big East play again.
Yeah, and it was a bit of a reality check. I think before the season, Flan was talking about that he was on the phone with Dawn Staley, and they were about to get that game happening, which I can't imagine with the schedule they already have. I don't know if that would have took another game's place.
Probably, yeah.
But I can't imagine, because they're right up there too. And so I think it's disappointing because like the day before the game, they'd just been talking about, you know, I mean, they wouldn't have admitted it, but this shorthanded UConn team was probably the best chance they've had in a long time.
Absolutely.
To beat UConn. And by the end of the press conference, we were talking about, you know, we want to prove that we're, you know, not a full notch above UConn, and the UConn's not a full notch above the league or more. And I mean, Creighton's supposed to be like the second or third best team, probably the second best team in this league, and they absolutely look like a full notch below a shorthanded UConn team, which is not encouraging, I think, for the remainder of the league. But you know, it just goes to show you, like, UConn it's a reality check, man. Like UConn, like you mentioned, Creighton throttled Nebraska, and Creighton's been so good against teams that are like right on that threshold of being maybe like elite, but like are still good, like ranked teams, but that are good. But when you get to those really truly elite, UConn,
South Carolina, Stanford,
it's no comp, especially with the way Creighton's team is built. Like it's already an uphill battle for them. So it just becomes increasingly hard, and that's when you kind of get hit with a reality check, I think.
Yeah. Let's wrap up with this. Luka Doncic went 60, 20, and 10 the other night. Nikola Jokic is going, 40, 20, 10 on a semi-regular basis, 40, 15, 15. Joel, who is the best night-to-night watch in the NBA right now?
As a team or a player?
As a player. You have to tune in.
Jesus Christ.
Who's the guy that you see on the schedule, the national TV schedule, and you say, I got to sit down and watch that?
We can't do this. This is the wrong year to do this, because my boy Mark Schindler was on Twitter the other day saying that this is probably the most interesting MVP race we've had in a while, because they're like...
Don't we always say that in December?
No. But there are legitimately 7 guys who, like, could go... Like, I don't know if this was yesterday.
We didn't even talk about Durant yet. Yeah, so...
Right, and KD's spazzing, and Zion, I think, is in the mix.
No.
Zion is literally
not as an MVP
sixth
candidate.
or 7th place in the MVP. I mean, the Pelicans are legitimately good.
Yeah, but it's not because of him.
And he just had 40 the other night.
Yeah, he hasn't done it long enough to be an MVP candidate.
Well, he's their best player, and they're pretty damn good. So I think he's up there. Donovan Mitchell was in the running there for a while because the Cavs are good. And
Tatum.
And he's good. So I would probably say Tatum.
You put Tatum.
The guy for me.
Tatum's the guy that you tune in to watch the most.
Not me personally,
when he's on,
but I think is the guy that most people should be tuning into.
You know who's an outsider in this argument? Maybe when Ja Morant jumps into the air.
He's not an outsider, man.
But he's an outsider.
Ja Morant has a whole hive. I'm not part of it. I'll be honest.
Oh, I know. But he's not an MVP candidate. But when he's
been in discussions.
When he leaves the floor, you think he's gonna stop rising, and he goes another 12 inches in the air. Like the dunk that he almost had the other night against Golden State. That might have been the dunk of the year in the NBA, and he missed it. But my gosh,
Aaron Gordon ended up having dunk of the year.
Well, Jaws was going to be better. He's either going to land on his head, Joel, someday, because he's so high in the air and somebody undercuts him, or he's going to have the greatest basketball highlight of all time. I mean, there's only two potential.
That's a risk I take, but Ja Morant, man. The thing with them, they're not the best team right now, and he was just the other day saying, "Oh, we're fine in the West," and like they're literally not fine in the West anymore.
I love it.
So, but yeah, he's up there, and he's one of the few guys like that. There's maybe a handful of guys, probably less, of guys in the NBA with as many leapers as there are. He's probably one of a handful of guys who could just jump in the air and figure things out afterward. Like he's just that type of leaper.
Isn't it crazy how you can put a league of the best athletes in the world, and this is true in the NFL with certain guys too, like Tyreek Hill, for instance, right? Like Tyreek Hill is going against the fastest men in professional sports in a defensive backfield, and he still makes them look slow, right? Giannis is going against some of the biggest men on earth, and he makes them look small.
And he punks them.
Ja is going against some of the best athletes on earth, and he's noticeably more athletic than everybody else on the court. There's just some of these guys that are like just 15% better than everybody else.
Yeah, and circling back to your point, I think, and the league is in a good place right now. Circling back to the first question you asked, Giannis is always going to be the guy for me. I'm tuning into because I'm part of the Giannis hive, I think, and he's still the best player in the world to me. KD is a guy I've been tuning into a lot more because he's probably playing the best basketball of his career, like really quietly. Like they're on like a 10-game winning streak. He's easily thrust himself into MVP conversations, and people probably can't get over all the Kyrie stuff and all the turmoil they had in the beginning of the year. I mean, the Nets, like you probably think of anything but basketball when you think of them at this point, but you should be thinking about basketball because they're killing it, and KD's playing some of the best basketball of his career. So that's another guy I tune into. And then Tatum, obviously, I think he's the MVP right now. I mean, people are saying Jokic for a third MVP, and I don't want to see that shit, man. I mean, I love Jokic, but come on, dog. Even as good as he's been, the Celtics are the best team in basketball, and Jason Tatum has been one of the best players in basketball. And it's hard to not think that if they continue this way, that he isn't the MVP.
Yeah. We won't talk NBA every week, but it seemed appropriate this week with the surge of Christmas games and all the fun stuff in the NBA. Looking forward to coming back next week. Creighton will be against Seton Hall on the 3rd, and Nebraska's going to have a couple between now and then, including this big Iowa game. Fred Hoiberg's got to, he's got to start proving that he's the guy, Joel. He had a nice little breakthrough there against Creighton in Omaha, but they got to show it on a consistent basis against teams like Iowa. He's going to get some opportunities.
If or when he gets fired, I'm going to dread those conversations of us going through the coaching search, and I'm not looking forward to that.
I feel like we've done that way too often in the last 20 years, Joel. It's just been too much of a topic.
So here's to hoping he gets another year so that I could at least put off those conversations for a year.
We'll see. They go Iowa, then at Michigan State. Schedule lightens up a little bit after that. So we'll see. Huskers got to make some progress. Until then, thanks for listening to the Half Court Press podcast. He's Joel. I'm Dirk. We'll see you next time.